Recording has started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Capes and Lunatics. No goofy intro this time because, hey, it's me, Phil. I want to say I'm here by myself. Lilith Hellfire is still recovering from physical therapy. Charlie S is probably recovering from a six-pack, but that's okay. I have a special guest. He's a man. He's got his fingers, it seems like, in all genres of entertainment. Let me introduce Mr. Bryan Edward Hill. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So you write comic books, you write TV. Did I see you're into music as well?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm kind of like I don't know what I am, man. I just do things, Phil. Honestly, that's really like what it is. I will do things that I think are interesting, and I don't know where they're going to go or how it's going to end up or any of that. That's been pretty much how I've lived my life, just kind of chasing inspiration and landing where I land, you know?
Yeah. But we're big comic fans here. Have you been like a lifelong comics fan?
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I grew up reading them monthly, kind of like any kid. And when I was growing up, that was the beginning of the British invasion. So you had like your Grant Morrisons. I mean, he's Scottish, I think, but you had Grant, Neil, Allen, like all that stuff, right? So you're reading like monthly comics, and then these literary things kind of show up in the periphery. So then you start reading those, and they seem to have the same layers and depth as the stuff that you're studying in school. So it kind of kept my love of them alive. But I never really fancied myself a comic book writer. I didn't think I would, because I didn't know how you did it. I assumed that you had to be able to draw to write the comic books, because I had no idea how the business worked. Right? I knew Frank Miller drew, his work. He was working with Lynn Varley, in Dark Knight Returns. So I just assumed like that's a skill you had to have. The idea of a separate comic writer and an artist, I didn't know what that was. But when I moved to New York, I went to school. I went to film school, and then when I was in New York, I met a bunch of comic book artists because they would all get together at this Starbucks on 8th Street. It was a place where people would just bring their lighted tables. Everyone was working on paper, and they would plug in to because there were tons of outlets. This is back when Starbucks like let you sit there for a while, and they weren't in the turn and burn business anymore. And they would just be around this huge round table, and they'd all be drawing at the same time. And I would see like a superhero. I'd look over someone's shoulder and see something that looked like a ninja, and that looked like Lion-O, and and that looked like another thing. So I was like, kind of curious about what these guys were doing, and I just struck up a conversation. And that's when I started to meet my first comic pros. They were. This was all like before people like Christian Dabari and Afua Richardson and Nelson Blake were working regularly in comics. Damian Scott would stop by sometimes. That was cool because he was out there. I was reading his Batgirl stuff.
Oh yeah, I loved his Batgirl stuff.
Yeah. Silent Running is fantastic. So that was when I first started meeting actual comic pros and had an understanding of what the business was, because it's very, very difficult to know what it's like when you're just buying books and reading. It's not like Hollywood where there's tons of things about the business of comics. Not back then. Now there's more on the internet, but back then they just showed up like magic. So you had no idea. So I didn't think about being a writer until I met people and started talking about storytelling. I figured I'd be like an indie filmmaker or something. I had my designs on being like a 90s style indie filmmaker, and I would have these conversations about narrative and mythology and all of that, and they'd realize like, oh, this guy, might be able to write comics. And I started putting scripts together and showing things to people, and that's how that started.
You're probably the perfect person to ask this. I've heard writing like for TV or the movies is completely different than writing for comics.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I'm a visual thinker anyway.
Okay.
So even when I'm writing a screenplay or a television episode, I'm thinking about it visually, shots, angles, that sort of thing, kind of editing in my head. The biggest difference is you have to have such a command of economy in comics. You know, like a screenplay it can be 120 pages, 110 pages on average.
Mm-hmm.
A TV script is around 60 pages, between 50 and 60 if it's an hour long. Half-hour comedy, you're looking at about 27, 30. In a comic, you have 20 or 22 pages to cram what would be about 30 pages of screenplay. You know, that's a lot. It's a lot. So it's a lot of getting in really late into scenes and getting out as early as you can. And remember, if you have a splash page in your story structure, not only do you have a splash page, but you have the page that has to precede it that leads to the splash page. And then you have the page that kind of brings the reader back down into the story afterwards. So that's 3 pages gone. You got 20 pages and you have 1 splash page. You really have 17 pages to tell your story, right?
Yeah.
So the big difference is, I think, just having to work with that level of economy. And that means that things have to do more than one job. An image has to do more than one job. Dialogue has to do more than one job. You really have to employ all of the, Scott McCloud techniques, I think, to be able to execute a story. And it's still, taking me a little bit of time to master that. I'm still learning as I go. I learned on every issue of Detective Comics. I'd write the next issue and be like, ooh, I wish I'd known that when I wrote the first one of these. But, as you keep doing them, I think you get a little better and more comfortable in the form.
I loved your detective arc.
Well, thank you.
When I found out that was, I want to talk to you about Titans too, but the TV show, but
yeah.
I loved your detective run. And did you go to DC with the idea, or did they come to you and say, hey, we need someone to write this arc?
Well, years ago, I met Jamie Rich at a convention. So for anyone listening to this that's interested in writing comics and how that all comes about, usually it takes a lot of time and familiarity that's grown during that time. So there was I worked in indie comics for about, I don't know, man, gosh, maybe about 10 years. I did some stuff with Top Cow way back in the day. I don't think anybody read it, but it's there. And then I worked on a little book called Postal for a couple years. And I kind of was in and out. So I was going to conventions, occasionally doing signings where, the awesome readers that were reading my books would show up, but it would just be like 9 or 10 people or something. Like, I didn't have a long Greg Capullo line or anything, but I was around. And while I was around, I would bump into editors and all of that. And I'm terrible about networking. It's just not in my nature to do that. I don't chase people down. I don't get business cards. I'm terrible at follow-ups. I don't like leaving my house, so I don't go on meetings very often. I'm just horrible at it. But I'd seen Jamie a couple times, and he and I went out for a drink or something, just to kind of, this is what I'm all about, man. And that's what I'll do more than like pitch a story. I'll just sit and rap with someone and, talk about mutual interests so they get a sense of who I am as a person. And then, you just keep trading emails back and forth. So when I was working on Titans earlier this year, I was in Toronto overseeing the episodes that I had written that were being shot. I happened to be in Toronto for about a month and a half because I collaborated on 2 different episodes. They ended up shooting back to back, which kept me in Toronto for about 6 weeks. So I was up there and I got an email from Chris Conroy, who I hadn't met yet, but I'd heard of him through Jamie. And Chris was like, hey, Jamie tells me you're really interested in writing a Batman thing. How would you feel about Detective Comics? 5-issue space here. We're thinking it'd be cool if Black Lightning was in it. What ideas, do you have? And that's where it all really started. So I'm like a 10-year overnight, success into the big 2, right? If you look at the whole thing, it's just a lot of time and just talking to people, and opportunities rise up organically, I think. If you just kind of share your enthusiasm, right? Like if you're just enthusiastic about story and character and you just love having these conversations, people will pick up on that and opportunities will find your way. That's always been a more organic way for me to get more books out there than me actually just, crafting a pitch, typing it out and sending it. Like, I don't really do that often.
So they said they had an idea for the, the story with Black Lightning and what comes of the team. did anyone mention in that early process that this was going to spin out into a Outsiders book?
You know, we didn't talk about it in specifics, but as soon as you start talking Black Lightning and Batman, you start thinking about the Outsiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, you get the email that says, "Hey, what do you think about putting Katana in like a little appearance in here?" And then it starts to sort of form. But I didn't want to ask because, you know, I have no idea what the plans are. For all I know, Tom King was going to do an Outsiders book, you know, so I when you're working in like big two comics, I don't ask a lot of questions about what's going to happen next in the future because you just never know, right? So I thought like, okay, this is probably, you know, meant to at least launch some interest into the Outsiders, but it was really late in the process before I got the call asking me if I'd be interested in writing Outsiders. And then I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I've been sitting with these characters for a while, and I felt like I was doing a decent job in the superhero realm. I mean, Detective Comics was my first superhero thing, really. I'd never written a superhero comic before. But yeah. So it was in the back of my mind from the beginning, but then it just eventually kind of sprouted out of the ground, and you know, there it was.
Is it a little more nerve-wracking to work on like you know, it's Batman, you know, I mean, Black Lightning and everyone else too, but I mean, Batman is basically like the number one, the most recognized superhero in the world.
Well, you know, he's my favorite superhero. I've loved Batman for a very, very long time. So he's the character I feel the most confident about being able to write because I just, you know, I've consumed all things Batman since I was a little kid.
Yes.
So when I was writing it, I would just start like hearing Batman in my mind and typing it out, you know, Jefferson, we have to go stop this thing now. And it would just kind of happen, you know, you just hear it like kind of going on. So it was really, I think, natural for me to step into to that thing. I was honestly more nervous about like the 2 panels of Superman that I put in the last issue. I mean, I like Superman, but I was like, okay, I gotta make him, you know, I gotta deal with Superman. So like it's those characters they're a little more nerve wracking in a way. Like Katana is a little more nerve wracking and all that. There's so much Batman out there. It's nearly impossible to not have I think a strong perspective on how to write Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I mean, you did an excellent job, like, because I think we're around the same age, and I was reading this, and I'm like, this sounds like my Batman I've been reading my whole life. I mean,
you can date someone based on the way that their Batman sounds.
Yes. Oh yeah.
You know, like you're like, I know what you watched as a kid. I know what you got. Yep, totally.
So it was DC's idea, like they said, you know, give us some Black Lightning in here, give us Katana in here. Did they give you the whole roster, or did you have some flexibility on like some of the other members?
Well, all I said to them was, at first, I didn't want this to get too super powered in the beginning. And I wanted to scale up, as it were. And it's tricky, you know, putting Black Lightning and Batman in the same story. The reason that was the reason I had to create a villain, because if a guy can shoot lightning out of his hands, then you don't want, you know, him and Batman going after Mr. Zaz, because that's not interesting, right? It's, you know, the guy has so much power. You need a kinetic villain that's a physical threat that puts innocent people in danger. So that already started to frame what that narrative had to be. And then thinking about the Outsiders, I didn't want to bring in too many superpowered, like you know, big superpowered type characters into the narrative too soon, because then I think it might lose itself in science fiction. And I want to deal with that stuff, and I want to factor those things in, but I really want to scale this thing up in a measured way so it's still exciting at the ground level. Like, I never want to write a comic book where a kick to the face doesn't have power.
Yes.
You know, where it feels like unless we're throwing buildings at each other, there doesn't feel like there's anything at stake. So for, you know, characters like, you know, like Halo and like Metamorpho and all that, there's certainly plans to see how to integrate all of this stuff in there dynamically. But I want to make sure that we're working with the characters we have. I think there's a lot of work to do with Cassandra Cain. I think there's a lot of work to do with Katana. You know, I think with Black Lightning himself, there's a lot of work to really give people a sense of who and what that character is in the post-Rebirth universe now. So those are the ones I'm starting with, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to travel other places and bring other people in. It just means that we're going to build this very carefully, brick by brick.
That was going to be my next question. Are you going to rotate some members like in and out? Or are you going to have like a slot maybe for like a guest star every couple arcs? Or
well, I would tell readers, don't expect Outsiders, Batman and the Outsiders, to be like a Justice League book where every issue, everyone shows up, everyone says a button line, everyone puts a glove on someone's face. Like, that's, you know, because there's so many team books, like you've got those books already. This book, it's, in some ways, I think it's similar to the old Checkmate series from Action Comics back in the day. We don't have as many members. Yeah, like Checkmate had a lot of members. We don't have as many members as that series had, but sometimes you would do like a deep dive with one of those agents for an issue because they were sent to do a thing, and you wouldn't really see everybody in that story. But then in the next issue, you know, you'd see them come back and do all of that. So I would think about it more like that. You know, one of the things that really drives me up a wall in team stories is never being able to really serve a character because you're always serving all of them simultaneously. And sometimes I think it's better to not have this character or that character make an appearance so you can spend more time with who you're working with. And then when they show up, you can spend more time there. So I'm definitely going to take a couple steps into characterization. But for, like, you know, big moments, finale moments, that kind of thing, you're going to get a lot of teamwork as well. I don't want people thinking that. But I'm doing the best I can to make this a different experience than the other team books that are out there.
That sounds cool, like a spy kind of, like a spy thriller kind of thing. Yeah,
I mean that's kind of what Bruce Wayne is doing. Like he's putting together his little secret, you know, group, and I don't even think they know how many people are in it.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, Batman never wants to be in the spotlight. You know, he's more, you know, sticks to the shadows. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
The analogy I use for Batman and the Outsiders is a spy game. You know, it's like, think about Bruce Wayne like Redford, and think about Jefferson Pierce like Brad Pitt.
Okay.
So there's a little handler agent dynamic there, and then sometimes the handler comes in there and has to do a little spy work on his own. But yeah, like expect that kind of feel there, and I wouldn't expect trust to settle in immediately the way that it might in Justice League or even Justice League Dark, you know, those kinds of group books. This is still a group of people who might want the same thing, but they don't necessarily trust each other. And that's one of the things we're going to deal with as we tell this story.
But I have like a two-part question. Have you watched season 1 of Black Lightning? And has DC given you like a list, since Black Lightning is getting more to the spotlight, like outside of comics? Did they give you a list of like, this is stuff you can do with the character? Don't go here, don't go here, don't go here.
Oh, well, because I worked on Titans, all of the Berlanti shows, their writers' rooms are all in the same kind of compound here in Los Angeles. So I've seen, you know, I hang out with the Arrow writers and the Flash writers and the Black Lightning writers and all that. But there's a pretty strong, I mean, I wouldn't say firewall, but there is separation between what's happening in film and TV and what's happening in the books. So I never got anything from upstairs saying, don't do this, don't do this. My Black Lightning is younger than Jefferson Pierce is in the show, because that Jefferson feels a bit like a veteran.
Yes.
And my guy is still kind of on the way to his prime, I think. You know, like this is the Cassius Clay period of Black Lightning, and he will become Muhammad Ali over the course of Batman and the Outsiders, right? So those create differences between, I think, the way the two characters are articulated, you know. But luckily, they don't really dictate down to you. tell you, no, you have to do this and match this continuity and do that and do that and do that. I think honestly what goes on more of it is media mines the comics for stuff they're going to do in the show.
Yeah, true.
You know, like such and such character will show up in a thing, and then they'll be in a season of Arrow, and I think it goes more that way than the other way.
Okay, that's good to hear. I was worried they're like, oh no, you have to stick closer to the TV show, but no,
not. When you're dealing with an intellectual property and all of this adaptation work, it's so many moving parts, Phil. Like you can't try to make it all work interlinked, because it just won't. Just because you don't know if this is going to go and that's going to go, and is something going to get a season 2 or season 6, and we don't really know, and then the crossover happens, and then they reset the timeline. So you just kind of got to let these things, I think, live independently for the sake of the sanity of everyone who's involved in making them. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good, but I wanted to switch directions a little bit, because we have been mentioning Titans, and I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited for Titans because I love Batman, but he's probably number 2 on my list, because Dick Grayson Nightwing is probably my favorite.
Oh, right on.
And I'm excited to see what the show's going to do with him.
It's cool, man. I mean, I can't reveal very much at all.
Oh, I'm sure.
If anything. But what I can't, go ahead and ask your question.
I was going to say, can you reveal what number episodes you did for the first season?
Oh man, what?
Were they later, or were they towards the beginning of the season, or?
I think, gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I believe I did the 4th and the 6th.
Okay.
So my episodes are around mid. I think I stopped around mid-season of the stuff that I directly did scripting for. Okay. But I don't even know, because I don't know what the numbering is and how it all goes. Okay. It's Titans is definitely a work of passion, for Jeff Johns and Akiva Goldsman and our showrunner Greg Walker. It's very much steeped in character and real emotional consequence. So if you're a fan of Dick Grayson, we explore Dick Grayson in ways I think are pretty interesting, and hopefully people will enjoy it.
I mean, it looks pretty great from what I've seen. I can't wait, but
it's so weird, Phil. I remember being on set, and I'm pretty good about falling into the rhythm of whatever I'm doing and not thinking about it in a way that's going to kind of make me nervous or lose sleep over it, and because when you work in entertainment, you honestly have to find that part of yourself that just wakes up with confidence. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter. And I was pretty good. It's pretty good about holding it down and looking like I knew what I was doing when I was standing around there. But then I saw Brenton Thwaites come out in the Robin outfit, and I was 12 years old for 5 minutes. What do? You just see Robin standing in front of you, and you just got to take a moment for yourself. So the Titans experience, I had a lot of those experiences over the course of the show. It's a remarkable opportunity to be able to work on something like that, for people that have known me growing up and knew how much I was into comics and superheroes and all of that, and for them to have kind of watched me do what I've been doing all this time. I've been getting so many great messages from old friends on Facebook. They're like, wow, you really did what you said you were going to do.
Oh yeah.
You weren't joking, Brian. You really did what you said you were going to do. So yeah, it's been a really fantastic experience.
I'm sure. I mean, when you do something you love for a living, it doesn't seem like work, right?
Right. Yeah. It still seems like work sometimes.
Yeah. I'm sure. When you're sitting in front of the computer writing, yeah, it seems like work. Yeah. I want to ask you so much about Titans, but I know probably everything I ask, most of the stuff I'm going to ask you is probably going to be I can't tell you that.
Well, what we'll have to do is when the show's out there and people have watched it, I can come back and then we can do a deep dive.
Okay.
you know, and then I can really go in there and talk about the things. It's because the show hasn't premiered yet. It's not like we're not the 3rd season or the 4th season. Like, people haven't even seen the pilot yet.
Yes.
I'm very reticent about offering details because anything I say would make news.
True.
So
True.
And I'm trying not to make news.
That would help me, but no, yeah, I know. I understand.
Right.
All right. I have a question. That F Batman line, was that you?
No, it's okay. Here's a funny story about that. So, Detective Comics, I forget which issue it was. I think maybe like the 3rd issue of the arc or something had come out that Wednesday. And I woke up the Thursday of that week, and my whole timeline like was just people F Batman, F Batman, F Batman, F Batman, F Batman, right? I was like, well, what did Batman do in the last issue to make all of these people this mad? Because I thought that they were upset with something that Batman had done, and I thought, well, what did he do? He drove a Ferrari. That couldn't make people mad unless you have a lot of Lamborghini fans out there. He fought a bad guy. Batman does that. And I was just kind of like, what? Why were they so offended? Then I saw that the Titans trailer had come out, and I watched it, and I was immediately relieved to discover that all of Twitter wasn't mad at me. That they were just quoting the trailer. I thought that I had turned social media against Batman, and I was about to call Tom King and be like, I have no idea what's going on. I just had him fight a bad guy. I don't know what's happening. Don't yell at me.
Poor Tom King.
Tom's great, man. Like,
oh, I would love to. I would love to talk to him, but I'm just like, all the social media, you know.
Well, you know, the temperature is really high out there right now, and this too shall pass. You know, like we're in a moment. I think people are generally just kind of stressed out, for a lot of reasons, and you can make a lot of money profiting on the things that keep us separate, you know, and that's created this culture of acrimony that is self-serving in the moment. You know, you get that little dopamine release, you know, when you tweet something mean at somebody, but when everyone's doing it at the same time to everyone about everything all the time, it really drags down the spirit of the culture of comics. And my hope is that this, you know, takes a pause, we all take a breath, and we don't scare a whole generation away from the medium, you know, because we are fighting a war with ourselves. Like, that would really break my heart if people were like, you know what? I'll just watch the movies and play the video games because the comics people just seem to be all crazy and trying to get each other all the time. So in my social media, I try to be as positive as I can and try to interact with people as best as I can, just to create a little bit of an oasis out there from all of the back and forth, because that's just not going to get us anywhere. But Tom's great about dealing with it and handling it and all that. I mean, I learned a lot from Tom over the course of working on Detective, because I hadn't spoken to him before. I didn't know him very well. You know, we tweeted every now and then or something or other, but it wasn't until I started writing Detective that I had a reason to talk to him about something in earnest. And I was able to have some conversations with him, and, you know, he's got a wealth of experience. I was a huge fan of Sheriff of Babylon before that. That's actually how I met Jamie Rich. I was tweeting Jamie Rich about Sheriff of Babylon and how great it was. And he was like, hey, you should come hang out. We should, you know, meet each other. So, yeah, Tom's just great about handling that stuff and charging forward and telling a story.
But yeah, he's great. I love his Batman. I love his Mr. Miracle. I picked it up and like, I've always been like kind of lukewarm on the New God stuff, but like he actually makes me care about those characters.
Well, that's the trick, right? Because people who love the New Gods really love the New Gods, right? Like New Gods people are like Rick and Morty people, you know, like they're just like, you know, there's no half stepping, right? There's like New Gods and New Gods, right? But for people like me, I was never a huge cosmic guy in comics. Me neither. You know, I was a Batman, Spider-Man, you know, that kind of character guy. Daredevil, you know, these were the characters I was really into.
The street level stuff, yeah, like me.
Street level stuff, because I could relate. It you know, made sense to me. I mean, I liked as I think Cosmic Odyssey I did like growing up. That was a mini series way back in the day. I dug that. Anti-life equation and all that. But I was never really deep into it. But what Tom and Mitch have done with Mr. Miracle, they've let a whole group of people into these characters in a way that we can relate. And now you've got a whole new group of readers who's familiar with Scott and everything that's going on with him in an emotional way. So as things go, inevitably towards the epic again, then we're not going to be lost. I think it's a great thing for the DC universe.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's I'd love to hear about that, the synergy. Since you and Tom are both working on Batman and.
Well, so after I'd spoken to DC and I said, yeah, this is cool. I think I have a story. I told them the first thing I want to do is talk to Scott and I want to talk to Tom and I want to talk to James. Because I was following James.
Yeah.
And I'd be working alongside Scott's work and Tom's work. And James was super supportive from the beginning. He's like, listen, Bryan, you just do what you got to do. Go forth. Don't worry. There's nothing that I'm going to force you to deal with. And so I told James, well, you've done such a good job with the largesse of these stories, with like the big sci-fi elements, those big conceptual elements that you've brought into Detective. To continue to do that, I think would be a disservice to your readers, and it would just result in a pale imitation of what you're doing. But what I can do is bring it to a level of human consequence again, kinetic, put innocent people in danger, and almost Nolan it up a little bit in like a touch, right? And James was like, yeah, that's great. I'm all for that. And so he was really helpful. And Scott has been supportive of me since a long time ago. I was on an Image panel with him about 4 years ago or 3 years ago for a book I did called Romulus with Nelson Blake. And I had met Scott there, and he was awesome. And, we'd like trade an email every now and then and all of that. And so he was really supportive about it. And we talked about putting in some suspense thriller elements into the story, because Scott's such a master of horror storytelling. And I'm a huge fan of horror myself. So in some of the Karma stuff, you see like horror being used a little bit of suspense, is in there. And then with Tom, I just told Tom, well, I'm not going to mirror exactly what you're doing in Batman, because I think these books should all complement each other. And if you're taking a very character-driven, emotional path right now, I'm still going to deal with character, but I'm going to provide something of a kinetic experience so that the Bat reader that walks into the comic shop can get Tom's deep dive into character, the build up to the Selena moment. And if they wanted to get almost like a Batman the Animated Series written by Christopher Nolan thing, then you've got that. But it still had to feel like the same Batman involved in both. Yes. And so we talked a little bit, about like this. What do you think about that? And the problem with Tom is that he's so nice that he never tells you not to do anything. He really is like too nice of a person. It is a problem. Because you can't get that guy to tell you, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But I've been a huge fan of his work for a while, so I was very familiar with what he was doing, and just figured like, well, this will complement it. This will, and it's kind of an interesting thing if you look at that arc of Detective alongside the wedding story. It's almost like you get a sense of what Batman's also doing. Yes. It's like while he's dealing with all of this, he's also doing this.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you could, yeah, I kind of see that in this arc. It's like, is Batman just being Batman, or is he like kind of closing himself off from everyone a little bit because of what happened with the wedding and everything?
Right. Like, I didn't want to be blatant. I didn't want to put a big red circle around, this panel or this moment, but I wanted there to be some continuity of character. And Tom, Tom's been awesome. I write comics for fun. I don't write comics for income, because I really make my money as a screenwriter or TV writer, and that allows me to write the comics that I want to write. You know, when I want to write them, I get to work with this industry on my own terms a little bit. And if I wasn't having fun, and if I didn't enjoy the people, I wouldn't do it. You know, I wouldn't do Batman and the Outsiders if I didn't really dig all of those people that are in the Bat Office. But they're great. Chris Conroy is great. David's great. Jamie's great. You know, Tom, Scott, James, they're all great. So if they weren't as welcoming to me as they have been, I probably would have just done my 5 issues, done the best I can, and then politely declined moving forward. But everyone's been so awesome that I was like, yeah, I'll certainly stick around.
I was so happy because I've been saying for a while, probably since New 52, I'm like, man, we need an Outsiders team. It's been a while since we've had an Outsiders team. And
yeah, they're a tricky bunch of characters because they come from such radically different places, which is good in terms of the opportunities you have narratively, but it requires me to understand a lot of different things. Like I'm studying Kendo, and Bushido and more Hakakuri. I read a lot of that stuff growing up, and I'm really digging into that in Shinto, so I can understand katana a little more. Like what drives this woman? You know, what is her relationship to warrior culture? How does she view herself with her husband? You know, what's her faith like? Like really kind of answering those questions so that she's not just the costume and the sword. You know, you want her to be a person. So we'll be able to explore her discipline a little bit and what that means. You know, Cassandra Cain, and not just her learning how to speak, but also how she defines herself with her physicality and what that means for her. And James had done work with her being interested in the ballet and kind of exploring different ways to use her ability, you know, as an athlete beyond just, you know, putting foot upon face. So, you know, that we're going to deal with a lot. And Jefferson, you know, is interesting because he has to figure out what he's going to be, man. You know, and that's part of the dynamic between him and Bruce is Jefferson is kind of given this choice with the Outsiders. Are you going to be a local hero who, you know, protects these square blocks? Or are you thinking about yourself the same way we think about Diana, the same way we think about Clark? And I think Batman believes in Jefferson Pierce. You know, I think he thinks like, yeah, you're like that. You have the ability to be an icon like that. You just have to embrace it. And Bruce Wayne knows an awful lot about embracing destiny, right? So there's, you know, you're going to see those different things. But yeah, it's tricky because like Duke Thomas and figuring out, you know, how he's going to distinguish himself by virtue of the Bat legacy, but also not as a direct reflection of the Bat legacy. He's like a Bat character that can work in the daytime.
yes,
You know, so we've got these, you know, kind of things going on, man. So it requires a lot of me, a lot of different perspectives I have to become fluent in very quickly. But it's been a lot of fun.
oh, I'm so looking forward to the series. I mean, I don't want to bug you, but anytime you want to come back, once any issue hits, I mean, we can discuss issue. You know,
all right, I'll be doing the world tour when Batman and the Outsiders 1 drops in December.
December,
like I said,
we gotta wait that long.
I think it's December.
Oh
yeah,
man,
I think don't quote me on it. But
okay, I was hoping it was only like a month or two. I was like,
no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Usually we like to get a couple of them done before we start soliciting.
Oh yeah,
so we've got them like kind of stacked up. And then when Titans, you know, comes out and I can talk about it in detail, then I'm happy to come on and do so. I'm just trying to keep Jeff Johns from throwing me off of a roof.
I'm just trying to think of Titans questions I can ask you that maybe you can answer.
I mean, you can ask me anything you want. I
know,
you know,
but it'll just be like no.
If I can't answer it.
Yeah. Is there any character you think is like the breakout star of the series, or what you've seen and or what you've?
Oh, see, that's so hard to say, right? Because I have a perspective from being in the center of it, looking out. I think it's really going to be a matter of people watching it and them kind of finding it themselves. You know, I think because you never know, Phil. Like you think, you think that they're going to love this, and then they don't love that at all. They ignore that, and then they love this thing that you were shaky about from the beginning. It becomes everyone's favorite thing, right? So I can't really predict, but I can say that all the actors really worked hard to embody these characters, and fans of the characters who've grown up with these characters, who've introduced these characters to their kids, right? Like it's, we're sort of, they've been around long enough for the cycle to kind of repeat again. These characters are being treated with care, and we were very cognizant about people's experience and what these heroes mean to them, and the actors took it very seriously. I can tell you, Brenton worked incredibly hard because it was cold when we were shooting, and he worked really hard, to wear that suit and do the action and all that stuff. Like Stephen Amell talks about it, how no actor knows what it's like until they do it. They think they know, but you don't really know the job until you actually do the job. And they were all learning at the same time, and I think they did a really, really good work in the show. And I'm still friendly with all of them, so that should tell you something.
But yeah, I can't wait. Like I said, I can't wait to see it, especially what happens with Dick Grayson and everything. I have my theories, because isn't one of the episode titles Jason Todd?
Maybe. The Hill administration has no comment at this time.
And aren't we? I believe they've had pictures of Hawk and Dove. We're getting Hawk and Dove also.
Maybe.
I thought they released this stuff.
They probably did. No, I think I saw the Hawk and Dove stuff. Yeah, it was on like Deadline or something. Yeah, because that's I'm forgetting. Is it Mika? It's Mika. Minka Kelly. I always forget her name. Yeah. So they're definitely there too, for sure.
But and I was gonna say, you're playing in that Berlanti-verse, like you said. Would you like a crack at any of the other shows? Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, Legend?
I don't know, Phil. Like I wasn't being hyperbolic when I said I don't make a plan. I'm like the Heath Ledger Joker. Like I don't have a plan. It was that dog chasing cars. So I really, I kind of go where people think I'd be useful, I guess. Because I didn't think I would wind up on a DC show. I mean, I did a season of Ash vs. Evil Dead. And then I wasn't really looking for other TV work, because I was, working on a screenplay and putting pages down in a novel, and, thinking about, I'm always threatening the world with making an independent film. And I never actually follow through on the threat. So I was getting ready to, threaten the world again with this independent film. And I got the call to meet Jeff, and I'm like, Jeff Johns, about what? All right, Jeff Johns is cool. I'll meet Jeff. And then I met him, and then I read the script, and I was like, oh, this is Titans. So it all happened it felt like accidentally to me. So I haven't really thought about it, but yeah, I mean, I could probably do a decent job on Arrow. That's it's kind of more my speed, I think, tonally.
I was gonna say street level, yeah.
Yeah, I could do something there. Any kind of character that has to dig deep to get the job done, and there's like sacrifice and all of that. Those kind of stories speak to me.
Or they're even coming out with they're bringing Batwoman in also.
Yeah, Ruby Rose, man, that's pretty cool. She's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for that crossover. Those crossovers are always really good.
Well, Berlanti is so good about knowing, and it's really David Rappaport as well who does casting for him. They're so good about knowing like who to get and when. They pull the right people in at the right time, and they cast so well on this stuff. That's really impressive. So yeah, I think that'll be really, really cool. And I don't know Beth, the showrunner, very well. I just talked to her a little bit coming and going, but she's awesome. And she seems to have a really strong kind of understanding of what she wants to do. And that's really what you want in a showrunner, is someone who comes in with a vision, who knows what they want to do. It makes it easy to fight that war when the general knows where they want to take the troops.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that crossover last year. I mean, Justice League was good, but I think I liked that crossover more than Justice League last year. I was like, wow,
the crossovers it takes so much coordination to do those. Because you have to coordinate the visual effects, you have to get the actor schedules right, got to make all the costumes work. it's tricky, and as they keep adding shows, it gets trickier and trickier and trickier. I'm really impressed that they're able to do it as smoothly as they can, because even on a writing standpoint, you have to incorporate kind of everything else that's happening and leading up to this point and all that. So it's really masterful work they're doing over there with that. It doesn't happen by accident, that much I can tell you.
Oh yeah, that last one, it was like a 4-hour movie. I mean, you could tell all the hard work that went into it, but it was so good.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I won't keep you too long, but I'll go through like I said, we got like 5 questions. We'll run through these, and all right, so we've got these from Twitter, our Twitter at Capes Lunatics. All right, first question. Brian, what is your favorite way to consume comic books? Digitally, physically?
I prefer to read things physically.
Yes.
But I prefer to store things digitally.
Yeah.
So the problem is, one of the reasons why you don't see me on camera right now is my office is just a mess. I am surrounded with bright colored floppy comic books. They're like all over the place. But I don't know. I grew up with the physical. Yes. You know, it's a tactile experience for me reading. You know, I'm a guy that, like, when you buy a new book, and you open it up and the crease kind of winds at you a little bit. Like, I like those feelings. I like the smell of books. Oh, yeah. I was always go to a library and you could just smell the books, you know, and you'd be in the mindset of reading. So it's interesting reading things digitally, and certainly more convenient. I mean, I probably have 15,000 pages of comics on my iPad. But you know, the problem is it's really easy to purchase something digitally, but then you never go to it. You never read it. Yeah. It's like stacking up movies in your Netflix. You know, like it's there, I'm going to watch it, and then you never do. And so it's still like physical.
You have to download, you have to make sure your battery's charged.
You know, because Marvel had a sale like a while back, and it was like, it was a ridiculously good sale. It was like $2 for like all of Garth Ennis's Punisher. So you're like, yeah. And then you just, you know, you cop all this stuff, and now I've got this iPad full of stuff, but I never really open it up and read. I still end up reading The Dark Knight Returns again, or I end up reading like Arkham Asylum again. You know, I go back to my standards. Yes. So while I certainly appreciate what technology can do for distribution, I still prefer physical copies.
Oh yeah, I think guys our age we're more into the physical.
Yeah, and you can loan a physical copy. And that's an important bit of it. That's how people get hooked on stuff. Is you say, hey, borrow this and take a read. You know.
Yeah, people share some Detective Comics.
Yeah, right on.
All right, next question. Hi, Brian. I was wondering how you comparatively find the behind-the-scenes process of writing for television and comics. Did I phrase that right? Thank you for answering this, and thank you for your great work.
Well, the biggest difference is television is a collaborative process where you're doing a lot of imagining with a group, and you're building off of each other's ideas. And that happens on the road to sitting down and writing the script. And even when you're writing the script, it's still collaborative because you're sharing your work with the showrunner, you're getting their input. Sometimes the showrunner will rewrite you, you know, depending on if they have an idea. You know, it's not like an ignoble result having the showrunner rewrite you. It just means that they you spark something off in their mind, and they wanted to get it down on paper the way they saw it because, you know, it just came to them. So TV is very, very collaborative. It's like being on a jury for a year. You know, you're like in a room, you're eating lunch in the room, you're deliberating for a year, you know, and that's the experience of that. You know, comics is more of a solitary experience.
Yes.
You have an editor and you send emails back and forth, but you know, many times the artist will live in a different country. You know, Miguel, I'm not sure if Miguel lives in the States or not. Miguel might not live in the States. Mendonça, and then Felipe Briones, the other guy who did Detective with me, he might not live in the States either. See, it feels very remote in a way, which I also enjoy, because that's when you put the Blade Runner soundtrack on and you pour yourself some whiskey, and then you can sink into the mood, right? So that's the difference. Is TV is about working with a group of people, and comics is largely about charting that course yourself. On the writing end.
Yeah, yeah. All right. This next one you kind of answered on Twitter, but I'll throw it up again.
I'll answer
so
it again. I'll probably have a different answer. I don't have to be consistent.
Well, we want to promote your YouTube channel too. It says, are you going to upload more content to your YouTube channel? Will it be weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, or have you chosen not to have a set schedule? I've watched all 3 videos you have posted so far. Great advice and insight for aspiring writers.
Oh, well, I'm definitely going to do more videos. I will definitely have a new video up every Monday about writing craft, which is going to be the dominant subject matter of my videos. Occasionally, I will do a video about a specific project of mine. Like I just uploaded a video about a book called American Carnage that I have coming out in November. So I'll do deep dives on my own work. But really, this all started when I did Brian Callen's podcast. I was on his podcast, him and a guy named Hunter Motz. It was the Mixed Mental Arts, I think was the name of the podcast. And I liked it. And I was like, this is a pretty cool little format. And then Brian was like, Brian, you should think about doing a podcast, man. Like you can get out here and you can do that. I'm like, man, I'm not like Joe Rogan. Like I'm not getting out here and I'm not a stand-up comedian. I don't think that's the move. But it really sprung organically from because Brian suggesting I do something in social media, and then wanting to create something positive on social media, kind of in response, right? Like I'm a light the candle, curse the darkness kind of guy, and I get a lot of questions on Twitter about like writing and how do I do this and how can I do this, and I'm no authority, but I've been able to accomplish some things. I'm still accomplishing some things. So yeah, there expect videos at least every Monday. Sometimes if I'm feeling a little saucy, I'll do a second video during the week. But it's not a revenue stream. I don't even monetize them. So I have to make sure that I'm doing my other work too. But yeah. So we're gonna get into, I think the next video is going to be about structure, about act structure. So prepare for that.
Oh, cool. But yeah. Anytime you want to drop an episode here, I mean, I'll sit and talk to you. If you want to talk to yourself and send me some audio, we'll throw it up.
Right on, man. Right on. Cool.
All right. Next. Hi, Brian. Big fan of your work. When designing an arc for a comic series, how do you determine where to make the issue breaks? Example, when Michael Cray deciding to make each villain take 2 issues to take down.
Oh, okay. Well, in the Michael Cray situation, that initial structure came from Warren Ellis. Warren wanted me to do 2 issues for the narrative. And then when I got to the middle of the story, I asked Warren if I could take the last 6 issues of the 12-issue series and do the same story, same villains, and go a little further into the heads of everybody. And he was fine with that because I naturally think in 5-act structure because I write screenplays, and screenplays seem to be in 5-act structure or 3-act structure, and they're both the same thing. That's something I'm going to get to in my video. The point of it is, when you're working in 5-act structure, and usually you have 5 issues or 6 issues for an arc, the issues end at the act breaks in general. And then if you've got 5 acts, you got 5 issues, it all lines up perfectly. If you've got 6 issues and you have 5 acts, then you kind of spread those act breaks out a little bit so you have more room for action sequences and the rest of it. That means the 5th issue of a 6-issue series might be tons of action, and then in the 6th issue you can clean it up a little bit, and kind of deal with an epilogue like story and lead into the next thing. But I tell people, end your comics on cliffhangers if you can, and try not to make them like too cheap, but you definitely want to propel the reader to read the next book. So for me, it's just lining up the act breaks with the ends of the issues. If you look at Detective and you chart out the act structure of Detective, it pretty much coincides with the end and the beginning of the books. Act 1 ends at the end of the first issue. Act 2 ends at the end of the second, and so forth, or like the first half of Act 2 and all that. So yeah, I just try to like make the structure line up with the page count.
Yeah, I didn't know these days. So do they do like these? Does DC give you like, oh yeah, we need you to fill 5 issues? I'm never sure if like is there more of a push to write like for the trades? You know, like we need a
Oh,
certain
well, I'll tell you
amount.
what, I haven't done enough Big Two, Phil, to really tell you one way or another. I don't have that much experience with how it all structures out. It's a better question for Scott, you know. But I knew that it was going to be 5 going into Detective, so I had already kind of charted out the story across those issues. You know, with Outsiders, I'm thinking either 5-issue or 6-issue story arcs. So, you know, you do kind of go back and forth over structure a little bit, but yeah, I mean, you have to ask me that question in a year after I've been writing, you know, Big Two for a while, and I can tell you a little bit more about how that actually goes.
Cool. All right, and the last question, I was very curious about this one. Hey Brian, if you were given the chance to reinvent any character within DC or Marvel, who would you pick, and what would you do with them?
Probably the Question.
Ooh.
And I don't know if I'd reinvent them as much as I would just kind of reintroduce them. I mean, it would definitely feel very similar to the O'Neill Cowan stuff from back in the day. And it's really because we live in an age now where truth is difficult to find and trust.
Oh yeah.
You know, so like it's almost like the world that Vic Sage feared is here. Now,
yeah,
you know, like we live in a post-truth world in a way, and I think this is a really great time to tell a story about the Question and involve Renee Montoya in there. You know, when we have journalists being threatened around the world, you know, we have like the rise of social media. What would Vic Sage be now? Like, I just feel like there's so much that we could really touch on with that book, on top of having some really awesome martial arts fight scenes.
Oh yeah.
Like I'd love to do a book where I made people go sign up for a karate class or a jiu-jitsu class. You know, like that's in the 80s. I was an 80s kid. We all saw Karate Kid, and then we all wanted to learn karate.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that would be the other side of that airplane. The other wing of that airplane would be just the action sequences and what you could do, you know, with the choreography there. I'd love to do something with that character, but I think Brian Bendis, I think is doing something with him. So I don't know. He said something about it recently, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
But yeah, I would love to see that book. Yeah, the search for truth, especially in the age of social media and conspiracy theories. Oh yeah,
right. And like, you know, people just being able to kind of broadcast themselves, and that we're in this really interesting ham radio culture, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, and it's really fascinating, you know, how much reach that you have through social media, and how Vic would interface with that, and the kind of the print era dying a little bit. Like, I don't know, like I could go all night, but like, yes, I would do the Question, and I would make it awesome, and we'd all be wearing trench coats and learning how to kick.
Nice. DC, give this man that book.
Totally.
All right, I'll let you go because I'm sure you're a busy man.
Well, thank you very much. It was great to be here. When Titans comes out, I'm happy to come back, and we can journey into those episodes.
Oh, please do. We would love it. Before you go, promote as much as your stuff as you'd like. What should people be on the lookout for?
Yeah, well, I think right now, as I'm working on Batman and the Outsiders, if you haven't read my Detective Comics issues that start at 983, then you can still track down, I think, all of those still. Well, maybe not the first couple, but track them down. They're probably in your local comic book store somewhere. I've got Aphrodite 5 for Top Cow that's on the shelves now. Cyberforce for Top Cow that's on the shelves now. I've got a Kiss book that I'm doing that is crazy coming up. That's sort of dynamite. Look out for that. American Carnage comes out from Vertigo in November, and Batman the Outsiders comes out in December. I've got a couple other things coming that I can't announce, but if you'd like to know what they are, follow me on Twitter at Bryan with a Y, Bryan Edward Hill. At Bryan Edward Hill is my Twitter. I keep my DMs open, so if you have questions, you can feel free to ask me. Just be nice. And my YouTube channel, I don't have like a custom URL yet, but if you just look up The Hill Administration on YouTube, my videos will come up. And those are really exclusively videos about storytelling and storytelling strategy, and a bit about the business of being a writer. Expect new videos up every Monday. And I think that's it, man.
But yes, thank you for your time. And hey, I know you're already on YouTube, but yeah, you should do You have a voice for podcasting.
I did a little radio in college.
Oh, did you?
Like, yeah, all I want to do is write some comics, write a novel, maybe make 1 or 2 good films, and then just spend the rest of my life in front of a microphone like Joe Rogan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you know, just like wake up and like, you know, eat copious amounts of meat and then like sweat and lift heavy things and then just sit and talk to like Neil deGrasse Tyson for 3 hours. Like that seems like that'd be a great job.
Because seriously, I mean, you would get some listeners for your pod. I mean, but the stuff you're working on, and like I said, you have like a professional sounding voice.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, man. I mean, people ask me about just straight podcasting a lot, and like I just got on YouTube. The podcast is coming. I need a little time. I have other, you know, I got to write too.
Oh yeah,
so I can't be running 2 different television shows or 2 different media programs at the same time. But yeah, I'll certainly be on a lot of podcasts, even if I don't have one myself. And let's see what the future holds. If I do a podcast, it's going to be a 2019 thing. So.
Okay. But yes, I know you're a busy man, so thank you for your time. I know it's very valuable. So.
Well, thank you for having me, Phil. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thank you, sir. And I will send you links when all this goes up. So.
Oh, cool. Right.
All right.
Can I hang up now? Are you good? Is it?
Yeah. No, please.
All right. Well, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. And tell the other fellas I said hello.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Good night. All right, everyone. That was Bryan Edward Hill. Like we talked extensively about his Detective Comics run. If you're a big fan of Batman, lifelong fan like me, pick it up. Very good. If you're a fan of Black Lightning, pick it up. Like he said, American Carnage. He did his work for Top Cow and Titans. He wrote 2 episodes of Titans. So this is a man very much ensconced in the world of superheroes. But again, if you're we always say it, if you're a creator, look at the interview we did with Bryan Edward Hill. We're nice here. Email us, capesandlunatics@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/capesandlunatics, @capeslunatics on Twitter. We're on Instagram, Capes and Lunatics, and our voicemail, 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And if you producers just want to get a hold of me personally, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. And on Twitter, I am @nightwingpdp. Just like Brian, my DMs are open. All right. So join us next time. Lilith and Charlie should be back. Oh, and this week, if you're listening to this on the podcast, next episode will probably be Super Connectivity 200. Lilith Hellfire and I talk to movie star Charlie Esser about his work. So, it's just me. So until next time, do everybody's work. I guess I have been the Capes and the Lunatics. Thank you, Brian, and good night.